Hi everybody, my name is Leah Clifford and this is my discussion board 6 analysis of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest that we just had to watch. So I'm just going to read through the questions and answer them. Number 1 is, what is your reaction to the film? Did you like it? Did you not like it? I have notes written down, so if I'm looking over here, my laptop's over here. I said that I really enjoyed the film. I actually started reading the book a couple years ago and never finished it, so this was really cool to be able to see the movie. But I thought that it displayed varying degrees of psychological issues among the patients very well. I thought that it showed what the inside of mental institutions can look like and how it's different for patients who are voluntary and patients who are committed. I thought that it showed the different types of therapy that are used in mental institutions. In this movie, they talked about group therapy, individual therapy, medication, and shock therapy were shown. It also showed that not every patient in psych wards are insane or mad or crazy. And it also showed how the staff at different facilities can use their abuse of power over patients who are there, vulnerable. Number 2 was to analyze the character of Nurse Ratched. Is she completely flawed, or does she have some redeeming qualities? I don't think that she's completely flawed. I do think that she has some redeeming qualities. The notes that I took about her is that she seems to be extremely serious and very stoic in her work. But she does have a very calm demeanor when she's speaking to patients, but there was a couple of points where her calm demeanor was almost frightening. I also noted that she brings up very personal things about patients in group therapy, which is obviously quite wrong. It's almost like she aims to humiliate or embarrass them. And it seemed like she was very concentrated and concerned with the patient's relationships outside of the ward. Specifically, I noted their romantic relationships. I found it strange that she allowed the patients to get so out of control in certain situations. It almost seemed like she had very little control over them when situations became really intense. I also noted that she does not like to be challenged and that she has a tendency to abuse her power, especially with McMurphy. So that's kind of what I wrote about her. That was kind of my analysis. Just that she is very persistent, pressing, and invasive with her questions. Those are the things that I think are really flawed about her as a nurse. But some of her redeeming qualities is that she takes her job very seriously. She upholds rules of the ward, and she has a very calm demeanor, were, I would say, some of her redeeming qualities. My analysis of McMurphy: what do you think of his behavior in the ward, and what is his relationship with the patients? So McMurphy comes into the ward very confident, charismatic, bold, and loud, is what I first noticed. And then he was sent to the ward to be evaluated if he's mentally ill or not, on the account of at least 5 arrests for assault and statutory rape. And when the doctor is going over why he's there and why he's there to be assessed, he seems very dismissive to the things that he's done. And I wrote down a quote where he says that he's a goddamn marvel of modern science. And then right after that, I wrote that he seems to be displaying very narcissistic behaviors. It seems like he doesn't have a lot of care for other people and what his actions are, how they're going to affect people around him. I did write down that he seems to be a very big fan of playing games in the ward and teaching other patients how to play games. I noticed that right off the bat. I also wrote down that he does have a really short fuse and he can have a hard time multitasking and that he gets overwhelmed easily. I wrote this down at the point in the movie when he's trying to explain how to play a game and there's the baseball game on, and he's asking one of the other patients, what's going on with the game, and then somebody else is asking him how to play the game, and then everybody's lining up to take their medication, and there's music playing, and he becomes very easily agitated because he becomes very overwhelmed. And then when everybody does line up to take medication, he at first refuses, and Nurse Ratched says, we'll find another way to administer your medication if you don't voluntarily take it. So then he takes his medication, but he doesn't actually swallow it. So then I wrote down that he really likes to push boundaries. And a couple of examples that I wrote down was not taking the medication, trying to escape to go to a bar on the night of the World Series, and wanting to take another vote at the following group therapy meeting. Another one that I wrote down was making Chief help him to escape the yard in order to steal the bus. So just kind of situations like that. He really, really likes to push boundaries. And I also wrote that he seems to have a really big influence over other patients in the ward, like taking votes, creating escape plans. They follow him, on the charter boat excursion, just things like that. Other patients in the ward just really seem to follow his lead. I also wrote that he almost manipulates other patients, though, and he kind of takes advantage of them in a way, like using Chief to escape. When they were on the boat Cheswick to steer the boat that he stole, and the other patients were occupied by fishing so that he and Candy could attempt to, get some alone time. So I feel like he manipulates and uses the other patients for his own gain throughout the movie. Another thing that I wrote down is during his individual therapy, he's really not taking it seriously at all. It's almost like he doesn't know why he's there, kind of thing. He's making jokes and talking about how, he wants to kill Nurse Ratched, and he's bringing up inappropriate matters like his playing cards that are shown throughout the movie with, the women in nude and lingerie and stuff. I did note that he does seem to be getting closer to other patients, but again, I didn't know if that was for his own personal gain, to manipulate and use them. One of the evaluations, I think it was at week 4 that he was in the ward, they were meeting. There were a bunch of doctors meeting about him, and it said that he was not dangerous, that he was dangerous, not crazy or psychotic. So I think that it's just kind of telling that, again, not everybody who's in a psych ward is insane or mad or crazy, or, a lot of people are there to be evaluated for a lot of different things. I also wrote at the end of the movie, while he's still attempting to escape, that he's creating real connections with his fellow patients and gains an understanding as to why some of them are not ready to leave the ward. So it was kind of nice to see some character development from him. Obviously the entire movie is based on him trying to escape the ward, but because he does end up staying that night, but he does try to escape again the next morning, and he is somewhat successful with that escape, but when he's returned to the ward, he's very sedated, he can't hold himself up, and that kind of leads into the next question for me. What is a significant scene for you? I had a couple of significant scenes in this movie. The first one being that McMurphy didn't know that he wasn't allowed to leave until Nurse Ratched said that he was able to, and he didn't know that until one of the guards told him in the pool. And then at the next group therapy meeting, he also learned that those who are committed to the ward, like himself, aren't allowed to leave anytime they'd like the patients who voluntarily, committed themselves to the ward. The second significant scene for me was the chief standing up for McMurphy during the fight and learning that the chief can hear and speak. That was jaw-dropping for me. And then the shock therapy that was used on McMurphy. I felt like that was a really pivotal point in the movie. I think that it showed the types of therapy that can be used in a very blunt way. Because I'm sure that at the time that could have made, at the time that the movie was made, that could be really, you know, jarring for a lot of people, and not a lot of people probably knew that they used such intense therapies on people. The next significant scene for me was when Billy committed suicide and McMurphy attacks Nurse Ratched because he feels like it's her fault that Billy died because he, you know, was set out to be humiliated by her. And then obviously the last and probably most significant scene was when McMurphy returned to the ward, and he was so sedated. Chief finds him this way and smothers him to death to let him go from the ward, and then Chief breaks through the windows and escapes the ward himself. And then question number 5, do you see a link between the film and Rosenhan and Zaz? We're just gonna say that that's how you pronounce it. How's the mental hospital compared to Bellevue? So I just kind of have a list of some similar things that I've seen along the way between the film and the different hospitals and, you know, psychological researchers. One of them being patients were bound with handcuffs. You see that at the beginning of the movie. I noted that almost immediately because it was very, a really visual for me. You also see medication being used, group therapy, individual therapy, shock therapy. Something similar to Bellevue that I saw was medication and different types of therapy, and then patients having episodes or outbursts, and then there being voluntary and committed patients. So that was kind of the list of things that I saw were comparative to all three. And then ask 2 questions or make 2 comments about the film and what you thought was interesting. My first question is, why does Nurse Ratched allow the patients to get so out of hand at times? Is it for her own safety or the safety of other patients? I just thought that there were at times where her being the head nurse, her, you know, action was needed. And it was just kind of, this is what I mean by her, like, soft demeanor becomes kind of scary, because she just allowed them to, like, kind of go at each other sometimes, which was very strange to me. And then the second was that I was shocked that Mr. Turkle allowed the patients and McMurphy to allow the women into the ward with alcohol and to do, you know, the activities that were going on, and that he participated in some of those. So that was everything. I will link, or I'll put, like, all of the questions and everything I mentioned also in my discussion. But that is my analysis of discussion board 6.